Hey guys, welcome to your Module 3 short lecture. Now this week, your writing assignments primarily consist of two discussion board topics. And then you also, for this week, have to submit your municipal official selection as part of your final project. And I covered that in a separate short video for you earlier. So today I just want to focus on this week's discussion topics, and those are the roles of the treasurer, which is discussion topic 3-1, and changing times and changing decision making, and that's part of 3-2 discussion. So this week you're looking at the role of the treasurer. You're going to be evaluating the many duties and responsibilities of the municipal treasurer. And then you're going to describe for me and your classmates, in your opinion, which aspects of the job are most critical to the operation of government and which duties do you believe are the most difficult for a treasurer. And then you have to explain your answer in some details. Whenever possible, you should always use a source or a reference to support and defend your position. And then also make sure that as part of your preparing for this week's topics that you read chapter 6, which is the chapter on finance. Okay, so first I'm just going to talk about the role of the treasurer. And I think it's important to make sure you take a look at that resource that's posted. Because I think the resource will offer you some insight, because it takes a look at the role of the city treasurer. It's a job flyer is what it is, and how you can evaluate the duties and responsibilities associated with a treasurer. And so take a look at that, because I think that'll be a great source, because it tells you the typical duties and responsibilities, okay? So we're looking at what a city treasurer is a city treasurer is a position of responsibility for a city according to the prevailing laws in that city. The treasurer of a public agency is elected by the voting public or is appointed by the city council or city manager. So that's going to vary. Now, most cities will have a city treasurer or a whatever else they might be called in terms of finance. Maybe it's a finance director or chief executive or chief financial officer or something like that. But typically, you're going to have a city treasurer, and it's not unusual for a city to also have a finance director. They're two separate things. They have two separate areas of responsibility. Some of them merge. In other words, if you look at some of the job requirements and characteristics for finance director, you'll see that they're very similar to a city treasurer. So it's really going to boil down to the prevailing laws in that particular city as to the scope of that person's responsibility. So for example, in the city that I work for, the city of Ontario, California, the city treasurer was an elected official. He was responsible to the citizens to ensure that the city operates according to state and local financial responsibilities, and that revenues and expenditures match. He would deal with other city investments and bonds, such as if the city were going to issue bonds for a community center, then the city treasurer is involved, because he or she would often sign part of the paperwork necessary to get those bonds. The simplest way to put it is the city treasurer basically runs the city's bank. So you have this money, and oftentimes cities try to earn money on their money, just like you do. You have money, you might invest your money in something to gain a little extra, and that's what cities do. They invest some of their extra monies to try to make money. It all goes towards properly investing in properly investigating the resources, in this case money, for the benefit of the community. All right. So again, it's going to depend on the role of the city treasurer. The position of responsibility is going to depend on prevailing laws. And again, some cities will have a city treasurer, which is often an elected position, but they'll also have a finance director who's pretty much responsible for the day-to-day operation of the city's finance department, but also does has some of the similar responsibilities as the city treasurer. All right. So, for example, the city treasurer, when I was working for the city and I got a paycheck before we had direct deposit, there were 3 signatures on my paycheck. The mayor for the city treasurer, and the finance director. So that gives you some idea as to who holds the purse strings. And again, the city treasurer you can sort of consider them to be the city's banker. They're entrusted with this money. And then the finance director's job is to figure out, in part during the budget cycle, how much money there is and how that money is supposed to be dispersed to the different departments and to cover the costs for operating city government. Okay, so that's basically what is a city treasurer. That's just a quick overview. Some duties and responsibility. Again, we're going to go back to that job flyer that is posted as a resource, so take a look at that. Managing the budget of the city government, signs invoices, pays bills, maintains records of cash flow, works with licensed brokers to oversee the sale of bonds, things such as that. Those are some of the duties and responsibilities of the city treasurer. Ensure the tax revenues are sufficient to cover income payments that are made to bondholders, prepare annual budgets for the city based on income and expense projections. Need to be aware of changes in areas such as insurance premiums, utility costs, taxes, and other factors that might impact a budget. Now again, some of these might also be under the purview of a city's finance director, but they're also part of the overall role of a city treasurer. So again, cities are going to be different based on the prevailing laws of those communities as to how extensive a role that the city treasurer plays in the overall daily operations of the city versus the finance director. All right, so just so you know that, and some of the similarities in their job skills and duties and responsibilities are going to be very, very similar. They also help determine how much money the city can afford to set aside for the salaries of city employees and for community projects and things like that. All right. So my biggest point here is see the handout from this week's announcement on the typical job flyer with local government treasurer or chief financial officer, as it's also outlined. But you'll get an idea as to some of the duties and responsibilities associated with this assignment, because that's going to help you in your understanding of some of the duties that you think are most, the typical duties that are most important, and then those that are most difficult for a treasurer. Okay, so make sure you take a look at all of those. I didn't discuss all of those. I think one of the challenging parts for anyone dealing with finances is projecting future revenue, especially when you're dealing with local government. You have your staples, which could be property taxes or sales tax. Maybe you get a collection of fines and fees, building permits, things such as that. All of these, you can get a sense for where a city's going based on the economy, but if the economy were to take a dive all of a sudden, then you might run into problems. One of the things that was challenging for me was when I was working for the city. I was working for the city during the different conflicts in the Middle East, and all of a sudden your gas prices would start going up because there was a concern about those in the gas business as what impact conflict in the Middle East would have on gas production. And so all of a sudden we began to see our gas prices spike. So not only were citizens paying more money, but so were cities. And so that was an unanticipated consequence. And so cities had to figure out how they're going to pay for the increase in fuel. And so just all kinds of issues that can pop up. Okay. So I'm going to move on to the second thing, changing times and changing decision making. And this one is going to be dealing with that. We have learned that the economy has faltered, constituents' attitudes towards government have changed. As a municipal official, what steps would you take to address concerns of these citizens who desire to hold the line on spending while continuing to address the needs of other citizens who still deserve the same services and programs that your program has been providing for years. So how do you balance this? Well, I'm just going to talk finances because I think understanding finances is going to be critical. So how do you address these two divergent groups? The reality is that you need to understand what's going on financially. So there are two areas to look at. You could have internal problems and external problems. So internal problems include a decline in revenues, an increase in expenditures, a decrease in cash and budgetary surpluses. You could have a growing debt burden, an accumulation of unfunded liabilities, and the deterioration of the city's infrastructure. External factors can include a general decline in the city's tax base, an increased demand for city services, adverse external economic conditions such as the 2008 financial crisis, the decreased availability of grant programs from higher levels of government, such as federal government. Maybe they're no longer going to provide certain types of grants to local communities, and uncontrolled events such as natural disaster and emergencies, such as California wildfires. So this whole idea of holding the line versus let's continue as usual. Oftentimes local government will learn from their previous mistakes. So you may find local government being very conservative in their spending approach because they don't want to have that problem that they experienced before where all of a sudden, bam, they're hit with some type of crisis, or all of a sudden they're going to start seeing their revenues decline. And so this idea of hold the line versus continue as usual is an ongoing debate no matter where you are, okay? Some groups, some politicians think we need to hold the line. Others think since we have a surplus, we should continue funding programs or expand the funding of programs that that citizens need, whatever those might be, all right? So, if I were posed with this problem as to how you deal with the public, to me, it always boils down to the numbers and the revenue expenditures and the need to anticipate for external problems that are going to arise that a community may have, all right? And whether it's natural disasters such as fires or earthquakes, or you're talking of something different where maybe you have a series of water main breaks because you have pipes that are running water through your community that are over 100 years old. Those are going to be problems, okay? Additionally, having solid financial policies, debt management policies in place is going to be important. The ability to forecast future revenue and expenditures can be a problem. Understanding the futures of revenue can be difficult. I mean, most financial managers will take a very conservative approach to anticipate a revenue. It's easier to have more money come in than you anticipate than to have less money come in than you anticipate, right? And then your expenditure forecast. And the expenditure forecasts are short range and medium range forecasts. Short range forecasts are up to a year. These are used to prepare the annual municipal budgets and to manage your cash flow. Medium range forecasts are 2 to 5 years and are used to project expenditures, employee pay raises, and benefit costs and revenues, and to identify future fiscal gaps or potential fiscal gaps. So two things are looked at. Again, short range helps prepare your annual budget. Right now, if things look pretty good, then you can forecast maybe at least a similar type budget. Revenues are still holding strong. Like in today's economy, last I heard, jobless rates are down, so that's good. That signals maybe a strong economy. So a strong economy makes city leaders feel more comfortable because, obviously sales tax should go up or at least maintain. Property taxes should maintain themselves or maybe in some cases go up. But either way, understanding revenue and expenditure forecasts are critical as you argue for those who either want to hold the line on spending or want to increase services and programs, all right? And you can make the argument to either one based on what you know about your short range forecasts and your medium range forecasts, okay? I'm going to end here and I'm going to go to another short presentation because I only have 3 more slides left.